Sorry, wrong pocket, that's the bill. Fornication. Sorry, wrong glasses. I do apologise. Let's start again. For an occasion. I'm privileged to give the first speech. And I've always said to Louisa that she deserved a good husband. And George, you must be so proud to have got in there before she found one. Before I start talking, I've got a few things to say. That's mality, 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 malities. Right, that's the formalities done. They get worse, they get worse. Some of you are aware Louisa's half Welsh, so I think it's only fitting to quote David Lloyd George. Marriage is the greatest and oldest partnership in the world. It's the best and truest friendship in the world. It carries you through difficulties and troubles and bothers and worries, and it is one of the very few institutions that enables people whose dispositions and temperaments are exactly opposite to each other to live in perfect harmony. For fully 35 years, I can say my wife and I have different temperaments. One of us gracious, intelligent, judicious. Then there's the other, devilish, gregarious, grumpy, irritating. That's me. Remember that marriage is a partnership. Look no further than Anna and I. I wear the trousers, and Anna tells me which ones to put on. It has to be said that I'm only the warm-up act for the groom and the best men. And by all accounts, they have a wonderful and entertaining speech, given with a level of elegance I can only envy. As you can imagine, the arrangements for today are somewhat onerous, somewhat stressful, somewhat unforgiving and difficult. But I think I've nailed it. With a little bit of help from Anna, a smidgen from Louisa, I think we've got there. Over the last few weeks, I've consulted friends of mine who have daughters who have got married recently and friends whose daughters are about to get married for some advice on what to expect today and to give me some things to say. For the most part, they were completely useless. One of them did say one thing resonated. He did say, be prepared for some unexpected emotion. Not just on the day, but in the weeks leading up to it. And over the last couple of weeks, I have had the occasion pouts of melancholy. And I'm sure you can all guess why.
Money!
No, it has something to do with pre-wedding organisational stress. Then I realised it had nothing to do with the organisation, so it wasn't that. Then I thought it was the natural apprehension of standing up here and making a speech. After all, those who know me well know how much I hate to stand up and be the centre of attention. I was sitting thinking for the most of Louisa's life, I've been Louisa's chief advisor. She calls me for everything. Making the right decision can sometimes be quite difficult for Louisa. The conversation would usually start with, shall I, should I, would I, could I? And she would usually finish by saying, and can I put it on your credit card? Suddenly it occurred to me that this was no longer going to be me giving advice. And I'm sort of going to miss that, and someone else, and rightly so, will have that role. When I handed Louisa over to George at the ceremony, and I saw how happy they both looked, I realised it was pretty unimportant, and I think at the end of the day, all any parent wants is for kids to be happy. And I think you'll agree that Louisa and George look pretty happy today. For those who don't know me, I'm Dave, the about fatherhood, right? I've been given plenty of advice on what I should and should not say today, and I've thought about it long and hard, and I've decided to totally ignore it, and in the words of Frank Sinatra, I'll do it my way. They say that a good speech should be just like a mini skirt, short enough to be interesting, but long enough to cover the essentials. So hopefully with the essentials covered, here goes. To ensure I cover all the important points, I've been doing some research into Father of the Bride speeches. And my findings are, it's always the first speech, it sets the tone for the others, it's brief, solemn, and at least funny. Distinguished guests, those of dubious distinction, those of no distinction, family, relatives, in-laws and outlaws, young and old, friends, friends of friends, freeloaders and hangers-on. It gives me great pleasure on behalf of Anna and myself and George's parents, Heather and John, to welcome you to our country retreat. To share this special day with us. As I look around the room today, I see family and friends, many having travelled great distances to be with us. Many of you have played some part, however small, in the lives of Louisa and George, and your presence here is greatly appreciated. I'm sorry I'm looking down, I'm not looking at you, but if I look up, you can't hear the microphone. I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon and evening. Today is, of course, a celebration not just of the love that is uniting Louisa and George in matrimony, but also the families that have created, moulded, and influenced the lives of these two special people. So Anna and I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Heather, John, and the rest of their family. Today our family trees have sprouted a new branch. You've raised a lovely, wonderful young man, and we're extremely happy to welcome George and your family with ours. George is a credit to his parents, and I can think of no better person I would like my daughter to be married to. He's a gentleman, polite, and I think the two of them are made for each other. I am absolutely delighted to be his father. I've been told that most women have a tendency to marry men who have qualities and attributes similar to those of their fathers. So it is not surprising to find that George is charming, good-looking, generous, well-mannered and good-humoured, with high aspirations and yet has a laid-back and carefree attitude. It was an honour and an absolute privilege to escort Louisa down the aisle today, and I thought, and I'm sure you'll agree, that she looked absolutely stunning. Yeah. George, well, he just looks stunned. Of course, fathers are naturally biased where daughters are concerned, but Louisa always wants to make us proud, and in many ways I'm as proud of that desire as I am, of course, of her achievements, which have been many and broad, from her friendships and catalytic abilities with people, from her academic career, of course, and for her love and support of her family. And you must have noticed the degree of pride on my face as I walked her down the aisle to give her away as a wonderful, lovely, beautiful and multi-accomplished young lady. Louisa is very special to us, as are all of our children, and I watched her grow up into a beautiful, wonderful woman, always good with people, kind-hearted, perseveres under all kinds of difficulties in life, and has a great enthusiasm for life. I was thinking the other day that the one thing as parents perhaps we don't do enough of, because we just don't have the time, or just forget, is just to say to our children, we're proud of you. And I am of all three of our children, and I consider myself to be an incredibly lucky father. Saturday the 9th of April, 1988, was a truly memorable, most magical day for me. A day I will never forget. Because it was on that day, 29 years ago, I received something truly wonderful in my life. A free camera. Seriously, it was the day Louisa was born. She was born at the local maternity home in Ashbourne at about 7:30 in the morning, making her the only upward in our family. Chris and Jennifer having been born in Derby. About an hour before Louisa was born, the gas and air machine ran out mid-contraction. Having a similar machine in the surgery, I noticed there was a spare cylinder standing in the corner. So I quickly changed the cylinder before the next contraction arrived. Something that would be totally unheard of these days. The next morning I went to visit Anna and Louisa in the small 4-bed ward. All the beds were occupied. I approached one of the cots and picked up the baby and started cooing and crooning over it. The next thing Anna's saying is, "Put the baby down, Dave, Louisa's over there." Now, time for a few thank yous. Louisa, over the last year, has put in a tremendous amount of work, designing, printing, sending out invitations, creating favours, arranging flowers, entertainment, organising transport, to mention just a few. I'd also like to thank Reverend Duncan Ballard for a wonderful personal service. I'd also like to thank the Tissington Estate for providing such a wonderful venue, and Red Olive who supplied the catering. I would like to express gratitude also to the Royal Bank of Scotland for giving me preferential rates. I am reliably informed that should there be a medical emergency today, we have 13 doctors, 17 dentists, a few dental nurses and numerous medical staff associated with Derby County present here today. I am therefore assured by my accountant that due to the large number of medical personnel present, that we have a quorum, and today's celebrations can be classed as a medical workshop. CPD certificates will be available at the end of the week, in case anyone is tempted to move early. Louisa and George have been together now for 13 years. They met in the 5th form, or to be more politically correct, year 11, and they went on to study A-levels together. During a psychology lecture in the lower 6th form, the teacher got so sick of the boys talking and messing around that she instructed the boys to split up and sit next to a girl. I am reliably informed by a close source, which I assume George will refute, that she has never seen George move so fast as he plowed through a sea of boys to sit next to Louisa. Also, during these early years, they used to come home at lunchtime to walk our dog Millie. After walking the dog, they would sit down on the settee and hold hands, at which time Millie would plant herself between them, saying, "There's no way I'm sharing her." Louisa, at the age of 11, followed her sister and joined Voices. She replied solemnly a piece called Ave Maria, followed by Pi Jesus. She made many friends and toured abroad every summer for 6 years with the choir, remaining with the choir until the completion of her A-levels. Louisa was at one time an accomplished musician, having attained grade 8 on the saxophone at the age of 14 or 15. She entered the Ashbourne Rotary Club, Young Musician of the Year at 1. The following year she entered again and shared first prize with another musician. After completing A-levels, both Louisa and George went on to study physiotherapy at Manchester, and after completing this course she went on to study dentistry at Bristol. I have to admit the first 2 years at Bristol were not easy for Louisa. It took a while to settle in. Most evenings we would get a call from her. But after this initial settling in period, things settled down, and it's a tribute to George that their relationship lasted over this 5-year period, meeting when they could at weekends when George wasn't working with Derby County. Louisa's the type of person who would phone us up after an exam and say how badly it had gone. She had failed and would have to resit. As far as I know, she has never failed an exam. On her graduation day in Bristol, students and family were invited to a local lecture theatre for prize giving. On scanning the programme, I noted there were 18 prizes to be awarded. Louisa was awarded 6 out of 18 prizes, which I understand is still a record for a single individual student. I do believe that Louisa is becoming a perpetual student. After 3 years studying physiotherapy, 5 years at Bristol, in the last 2 months she has been accepted as a specialist trainee on a consultant training pathway in the Midlands area, lasting another 4 years. So it's back to the roots again. When George decided the moment had arrived to ask me for Louisa's hand in marriage, they were both on holiday in Thailand. He phoned me at approximately 7:30 a.m. and uncharacteristically and with great nervousness in his voice, he said, "I'm thinking of proposing to Louisa." Thinking. "Do you have any objections?" Now, anyone who knows George knows that social timing isn't one of his strengths. And at the specific time he contacted me, I was sat on the toilet with my trousers down. So I suspect at this point Louisa is wondering which embarrassing and inappropriate stories her dad has chosen to share with me. Well, I didn't have much ammunition on Louisa, other than a few simple indignities. She pretty much left it up to her dad to be embarrassing, inappropriate and annoying, and I must say I didn't disappoint. It seems the protocol after embarrassing the happy couple is to give some advice on marriage. There is a saying that goes something like, happy marriages begin when you marry the one that you love, but marriages absolutely blossom when you love the one you marry. And there's a lot of truth in that. So with that thought in mind, if they work hard at their marriage, which we all have to do, and if they are willing to change and modify things over the years to meet each other's changing needs, I'm sure they'll have a long, happy and successful marriage. Some of you will not be aware that from the age of 8, Louisa's favourite film has been Lorenzo's Oil, a true account of a family's devotion to develop a cure for their son's genetic condition. Louisa cried and marvelled at this journey, which resulted in the commercial production of a therapeutic medication. And we have here today a key member of that production team whose company developed that oil. There was a time when Chris and Louisa were in a car, and we pulled into a garage to fill up with petrol. There were some Christmas trees stacked in a metal cage to keep them upright. Chris commented that they looked quite good trees. Louisa said, "No, they're no use to us. They're locked up. We need a free-range tree." She has been known to go around a roundabout near Marks and Spencer's on a driving lesson the wrong way round. Louisa does, however, have some experience of working on the Tissington estate. When she was about 15, she was employed at weekends in Herbert's tea rooms. One day an older couple came in and the lady ordered a fruit juice, the gentleman a coffee. Louisa made up the drinks, took them to the table. About 2 minutes later, the lady beckoned Louisa over and complained that the drink was too weak. Louisa stormed back into the kitchen and said to the manager, "That lady says that I've made this drink too weak. I know that's rubbish, as I tried it before I took it out." Now, I'm definitely no poet laureate, but I thought it only appropriate that I should compose a little ditty for Louisa at George's wedding. So here goes. Today's my daughter's wedding day, and a wonderful thing it is, to see her so excited, so happy to be his. But once she was my little girl, loved her daddy and her toys. But then her interest began to change from colouring in to boys. Today's my daughter's wedding day, how fast the time did go. From little feet and the Muppets to a wedding gown that flowed. From golden locks to lollipops, she grew up straight and tall. From baby things to a wedding ring, how I loved her through it all. And now she will go forward to enter married life, to share the good and bad times, the happiness and strife. I wish them both the best of luck. Who knows what the future will hold, but hopefully they'll be blessed with a baby girl, just like the one he gave to me. We wish you a long and happy marriage. We hope that you have a wonderful and exciting honeymoon, which, George, is the period between I do and you better. I have already passed on to George my top tip for successful and happy marriage. George, nod your head and say those 2 words.
Yes, dear.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm getting close to saying my welcome. I can see the groom and best men eager to get on with their speeches. Thank you for your indulgence and for listening to my rambling. All that remains is for me to ask you to raise your glasses, be upstanding, join me in a special toast for the future health and happiness of Louisa and George, the bride and groom.
Ladies and gentlemen, raise silence for the groom, Mr. George Polgars.
Thank you for those kind words, Dave. I think I'll let Lou still call you up and go through the credit card and get you to pay for everything, if that's all right. I'll let you have that. Firstly, my wife and I.
That's getting a good start.
We'd like to thank all of you for making the effort to join us here on our special day. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, and I think you'll agree it's been a huge success so far.
Yeah.
This day has been a long time coming. And after 12 years, I asked the question. Dave, will you pay for our wedding day? On a more serious note, we'd like to express our thanks to one of the most generous families I've ever come across. None of this would have been possible without Dave and Anna. So thank you for everything you've done. I would also like to say an additional thanks to Anna, who looks beautiful today. She's put a huge amount of effort to make today what it is. She's helped with choosing the hymns, creating the beautiful flower wall, and has given ideas throughout the planning. She also booked the magician on one solo visit up here, and I think you'll agree it was a stroke of genius. Together, Dave, Lou and Anna have created Lou's tea lights, which are the favours for the girls that you'll see in front of you for them. Anna, Lou and I would like to give you this gift as a token of our appreciation for everything that you've done for us. Thank you. Dave and Anna, thank you for the hospitality you've shown. Not only tonight, but for the previous 12 years. I've enjoyed countless meals, drinks, and good times with you. You've always made me feel welcome and relaxed, and have included me throughout that time. Thank you for giving me your daughter. It doesn't take long to see where she got all the great qualities from. I promise to you both to take good care of her and always do everything that she tells me. Like you've said, Dave, happy wife, happy life. All the Roses have always made me feel very welcome and part of the family from day one. Today is when it becomes official, but I've looked up to Dave and Anna as second parents for a long time. This is also true of Jen, Chris and Margaret, who I've seen as a big sister, brother and additional grandma. Dave and Anna, you've brought up a clever, sensitive, funny, talented daughter in Lou, and her successes in life say a lot about the people you both are, and I'm delighted to officially have you as my in-laws. We'd also like to say a thank you to my family for everything they've done for the wedding. My parents, alongside Lou, have been on gin duty for the previous 4 months. It's been a real team effort, and they all look and taste fantastic. Mum, we'd like to give you this gift as a token of our appreciation. I'd also like to take this moment to personally thank my mum and say how beautiful you look today. She's always been there for me, challenging me to continually improve and encourage me to go for more. She's always believed in me and I'm eternally grateful. I'd also like to thank my dad, who's installed a work ethic in me and has always had the perfect bit of advice when it's needed. I couldn't ask for better guides, coaches or parents. I'm proud to be both as my mum and dad. And Luke feels the same about you both as I do her parents, and has asked me to express her thanks today. I'd like to add my thanks onto this for welcoming Lou into the family. Throughout my life, you've known exactly what to do to embarrass me at any moment. But I'm sure you're going to extend this courtesy to Lou. When I look at you both, I think that is how I want Lou and I to live our life. retired by 50, holiday every 3 months, and golf on a regular basis. Although Dave and Anna don't have it too bad either. You, along with my grandparents, brother and sister, have helped shape me into the person I am today, and given me the qualities to get this wonderful person to agree to spend the rest of her life with me. So thank you. To the VIP girls, the bridesmaids, I think everyone here will agree you all look stunning. And Evie and Amelia, thank you for doing an amazing job being flower girls. You both look beautiful. Thank you for helping Lou get ready in time today. There was no margin for error with Dave keeping track of time. You've all done a fantastic job. I know you've all been there for Lou at different points in her life, and in different ways, whether it be with a G&T, or when a glass of wine is needed, advice, or someone to laugh or cry with. You've always been there for her, and we'd like to say thank you for all that you've done. We also look forward to many happy times together in the future. If everyone could charge their glasses and be upstanding, my first toast to the beautiful bridesmaids and flower girls. Bridesmaids and flower girls. A special mention must go to Sarah and Jen, who organised the hen do for almost 30 hens. Can't imagine how hard this would be, but I know Lou absolutely loved it and had their best weekend ever. I haven't heard many stories from the hen do. I did hear there was a hilarious Mr. and Mrs. quiz. I've stolen the idea and thought we could do it now. So, I'm going to ask the question. The answer is going to be heads or tails. If you think it's heads, hands on your heads. If you think tails, hands on your tails. So, if everyone could stand up for the first question. Dave's kind of ruined this already, so if you get it wrong, shame on you. Louisa is a talented individual, but what musical instrument did she get to grade 8 in? Heads, piano, tails, saxophone.
Tails.
Cheers, Kylie. Answer by putting your hands where you think it is. It was tails. So if you got it wrong, yeah. Now, to check how closely you've been paying attention today. There were 3 hymns in today's service, but which was the last one sung? Heads, Love Divine. Tails, I Vow to Thee, My Country. It was Heads, Love Divine. If you've got it wrong, sit down and have a drink. As some of you may know, Lou completed her first half marathon earlier this year. Did she finish sub 1 hour 50 minutes?
Yeah.
Heads, yes.
Yeah.
Tails, no. The answer is tails. No. You've got it wrong, sit down and have a drink. She actually did it in 1 hour, 50 minutes and 32 seconds. Almost, but not quite. Fourth and final question. Louisa and I have been together for quite a while now, but where's the furthest we've travelled? Heads, Koh Samui, or tails, San Diego? Heads, Koh Samui, tails, San Diego. One at a time. If you're still on your feet, congratulations, you obviously know us best. You can sit down and have a well-earned drink, and for the lads, that means the gin shot. Now, back to this. We'd also like to thank Jenny McLeod for the beautiful reading she gave earlier. If you're wondering why I'm using second names at this point, it's because there are so many bridesmaids. Lou is obviously super popular or indecisive. I'll let you decide. From the most beautiful group in the room to a questionably handsome group, the groomsmen. To be fair, you've scrubbed up well. I think it's the first time I've seen Rob in clothes he didn't go to school in for a very long time. Thank you for helping whenever and whatever was asked of you. I know the groomsmen are all true friends because I can go a long time without seeing them. However, when we do catch up, it feels like no time has passed. They're always there for me, whether it's a beer, or food, or both. They're there. They're true friends, and I'm glad they're in our life. We'd also like to thank Nathan for the reading he did. Thank you. I'd like to thank Chris and JK, my best man. They organised an incredible stag do in Barcelona, which everybody thoroughly enjoyed. You may not have met either of them yet, but they're the guys that are going to try and get everyone laughing at my expense. I'm sure they'll go to extremes to do this, with pictures, video, and a dodgy memory of the past. I'd like to put on record anything questionable or bad they say about me is either untrue or they tricked me into it. One thing is for sure, they won't let the truth get in the way of a good story. We'd also like to say a special thanks to Simon and Alex. They've been going around with video cameras all day and flying drones overhead. I hope it makes great footage, just like you get from the Sent in Space balloons, which are available from Alex or at www.sentintoSpace.com. We'd also like to say a quick thanks to Sir Richard for allowing us to use this unbelievable venue, Red Olive, the food we've all enjoyed, Mango Acoustic, Funtime Frankie's, Tanake Flowers, HBA Photography, and anyone else I should have mentioned. Thank you for making our day that extra bit special. We'd also like to say a massive thank you to everyone here for joining us on our special day. Your effort and generosity has blown us away. You all look amazing, and it's a great feeling to have everyone we love in one room here to celebrate with us. We both really appreciate it. I hope you've all enjoyed the day so far and go on to have a fantastic evening with us. Woo! Cheers. I think I may have forgotten someone rather special. Louisa Sean Colglass. Firstly, I would like to say you look absolutely incredible today. When I saw you at the end of the aisle, you took my breath away. I have never seen a more perfect, beautiful bride, and I can't believe you've agreed to spend the rest of your life with me. I'd like everyone to be upstanding and join me in raising a glass to the most beautiful bride and my wife, Louisa. Louisa!
You're trying to use all the time of day.
I thank a lot of people for everything they've done to make today happen. But without you, there quite simply wouldn't be a wedding. You spent hours planning every little detail, from the tablecloth trim, to the giant love letters outside, to the whole organisation and timings of the whole day. You've designed signs, cakes, planned photos, and kept a log of what and when everything must be paid. You have done an unbelievable job. Watching you organise this day has made me even more impressed with your ability to do whatever you want in life and be hugely successful at it. As we start a new chapter in our life, you're also starting a new chapter in your professional life. As Dave's already explained, Lou's recently got onto a consultant pathway. I think the decision to do this reflects you as a person. You're always there to help and do whatever you can for anyone, no matter what, without thinking about any personal gain. It's the reason so many people, everybody here in fact, has made the extra effort to support and be with you on this day. I know you'll do a fantastic job, and I'm so proud of you for taking on this challenge, as is Ray, my finance advisor. Lou and I have been together for quite a while now. Before I proposed, I used to get a bit of banter. Stuff like asking what was taking me so long, why I hadn't popped the question yet, and referring to an engagement ring at every single opportunity. And this was just on my rose. who has been by my side for almost 12 years now and makes me a better person every day. I finally came to my senses and asked Lou to marry me. You encourage, inspire, and drive me every day. I adore everything about you. You light up the room when you walk into it, even more so today. You're beautiful, kind, generous, funny, and selfless. I think about our future, and I know you're going to be an incredible mother, wife, and best friend. Thank you for agreeing to marry me and making me the proudest, happiest man in the world. I can't wait to spend the rest of our lives together. I think that's probably enough from me for now, so I'll hand over to my best man. Just remember, never let the truth get in the way of a great story.
Microphones because there's two of us, and if anyone can't hear us at the back at any point, just let us know and we'll shout even louder. We don't want you missing any details of George's sordid, horrible past.
Also, these table centres, if they get in the way, we didn't tell you to move them. Fornication. Sorry, that was Dave's speech from my wedding. Here we go. Good afternoon, friends, family of George and Louisa. For those of you who don't know me, I'm James, married to Jennifer, and have the pleasure of being George's brother-in-law.
Sorry, James, I'm going to... Do carry on.
If you could all do us a favour and forget everybody's speech so far today, just forget it, that would help our material a hell of a lot.
I'm so glad there aren't any more speeches now ahead of ours, I must say. There we go, okay. So, and I am Chris Rose, of course. I'm Louisa's older brother, so as with James here, I've been George's brother-in-law for about 6 hours now or so. And we feel this gives us a unique insight into, you know, not only George, but Louisa, and I guess their relationship also.
Now, as Dave has already explained, if anyone from Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs is to ask, this is an educational, tax-deductible event. So to continue this, Dave's accountant has asked us to put up some aims and objectives for today. We'll also get to accept some feedback in the form of a pint at the bar afterwards.
So when Louisa first asked James and myself to be George's best men, we were understandably honoured, of course, a little bit intimidated, I guess, but ultimately we were excited.
Now, the roles of best men are quite simple. First order of business, stag do. Now, I think you'll agree. Everyone who attended, a good time was had by all. All limbs, organs, facial hair were returned to Louisa with only minor wear or tear. So mission accomplished there. George, you'll be pleased to know we're not going to dwell on any of the kind of in-jokes that you get from sort of stag do, okay? It's kind of lost on the majority of people, so...
Henry, sorry, can you just someone wake Henry up at the back there? I think he might have nodded off. Sorry, James, just carry on.
Sure, that's great. Final order of business, of course, is to support George during the wedding service.
So that would be involved being on hand with a subtle tissue, gentle pat on the shoulder, and perhaps a firm grip from myself and James on each of George's wrists. Again, job done. Finally, we have this speech. Now, what we'd like to achieve with this speech is to take you on a journey, as many others have touched upon, a journey through the young life of George, William Polglass, the meeting of Louisa, and the relationship that culminated into today's wedding, which is why we're all here. So let's start at the beginning. The year is 1988. The year is 1988. It's the 9th of April, as my dad mentioned, in a snowy Ashbourne maternity home. The sound of Louisa Rose can be heard. She's weighing in a robust 8 pounds 4 ounces. I should indicate at this point that Louisa is the child in the middle, flanked by myself and Jen.
Now, we don't have to wait long for the appearance of our main protagonist. Just over a month later, a slightly warmer Wordsley Hospital, a svelter George Polglass makes an appearance, weighing in at 6 pounds and 10 ounces. Now, George, as you know, is the eldest of three, with twins Sarah and James only a couple of years behind. And with Heather and John completes the Polglass family.
Wait.
Now, you would have thought, thanks Sarah, Now, you would have thought the young Polglasses would have a little bit of rivalry at that young age. It's not the way George tells it. George always insists, to me at least, that there was no competition because he was simply the best. Now, I was discussing this with James and John before this speech. Once they'd stopped laughing, they regaled me with a story of racquetball and how George was completely condemning his brother James's ability and then went on to play him and lost 15 games on the trot. And then I believe referred to it as a stupid sport.
So George went on to attend Westbourne School in Sheffield from the age of 11 and stayed there until he had completed his GCSEs. This was before the Polglass family had moved to Derbyshire, of course, and before James or I knew of George. We all have our own first impressions of George. What was George like at that tender age, I wonder?
Well, fortunately, due to an anonymous source, thanks again, John, we've been given access to George's school reports. Let me read you a couple of key points. Headmaster's Report 1999. His behaviour around school is much more controlled. And all in all, he is developing into a good citizen.
Developing into a good citizen, headmaster or parole officer, you decide.
Headmaster's Report 2000. George's enthusiasm for life is infectious. And I enjoy his sense of humour. However, I'm forced to ask George to tuck his shirt in at every opportunity.
Clearly there comes a point in every young man's life when new priorities come to the fore and others reduce. I think for George, it's fair to say, James, this occurred in 2002?
I think you're right, Chris. Let me read you a report from 1 year later. Headmaster's Report 2003. His behaviour, as I regret, become inappropriate. And occasionally, positively rude. Without losing his sense of humour, his approach to classwork must be more serious.
You know, I think everyone who attended George's stag do will agree that George has learned that balance by now. And I must say, the author of these words does seem to have gotten a good measure of George. What is this? Like, you know, his behaviour has become...
Sorry, George, I shouldn't have
Anyway, sorry. Anyway, moving on. The year is now 2004. And we're moving to the part of the story when George and Louisa first meet. Now, the Polglass family have completed their move to Derbyshire, and George and Louisa are both attending Queen Elizabeth Grammar School Sixth Form.
Now, the universe, they say, moves in mysterious waves. However, looking subjectively about their first meeting of our bride and groom, I would conclude that the universe is a romantic. During our research and interviews with people we know, there seems to be 3 key points to their first interactions.
So, courtship began, as you would expect, during the first year of sixth form, and a chance meeting during a trial A-level chemistry class. The purpose of this class, as we understand it, and we have done some research into this, was to entice new students to study that subject. And it was, in this case, based around a practical demonstration of how an electrical current could be passed through the students' bodies without any consequences. But there was, of course, an unforeseen consequence, of course. When George reached out to the smiling young lady next to him, he did feel a spark. The current transferred through his body and into Louisa's. Was this beginning of the inevitable? I know this sounds really cheesy and that we have made it up, but I guarantee you, I mean, it is a fact. The first interactions of George and Louisa really was, they were challenged to create a spark between each other.
It is true.
Okay, next we're moving on to the psychology of our young bride and groom, and more accurately, the psychology lesson that they first shared. Now, as already has been mentioned, thanks for that, Dave, accounts differ as to the exact dynamic of George and Louisa during this time. Now, some say that the teacher moved the boys to sit next to the girls after a particularly disruptive lesson, and that George made a beeline for Louisa. Our sources go on to say George used to pick on Louisa a bit just to get her attention. Now, I can't believe that, George. From what George tells me, he was the big man in the new school. And it was, in fact, Louisa that was putting all the moves on. That's right, George? That's right. I guess we'll never know exactly the right dynamic. In any case, they went on to sit together, for the foreseeable future.
And finally, we are left with the artistry of their first meeting. Once again, we are presented with a more literal interpretation. During these early days of George and Louisa, it was clearly obvious that there was something special between them. So much so that fellow students, or a fellow student at least, felt overwhelmed with the clearly evident beauty between George and Louisa. She felt obligated to express this early relationship as part of her A-level art project.
Now, the work involved our future bride and groom locked in an internal embrace, with their passion seemingly erupting out of them, and displayed all around them. Now, we understand that the piece was displayed for many years at Quig's art department, and it's been said, by those who remember it, that the painting perfectly encapsulated the raw passion clearly seen between our young bride and groom. Now, devastatingly, this piece has been lost for many years.
We are, however, fortunate to have the artist here today. Hi, Catherine. For those who have not had the honour of gazing upon this composition, Catherine, please tell us, what was the message? In a word, give us a word.
Oh, got it, you mean things.
Well, I'm going to have to insist.
The title was Love and Destiny.
Love and Destiny. Oh, that is beautiful. Sounds more like the concept, but no matter. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a treat for you today. This news will electrify the Ashbourne art community. After the masterpiece was rescued by our good friend and resident mole, Leanne Clayton, we have the immense pleasure of unveiling this masterpiece for you today. Completed over 13 years ago.
T-shirts, mugs, housemats, all available, please see us afterwards.
Now, we thought it would be selfish for us to keep this wonderful and avant-garde piece of artwork to ourselves. So we thought this item, deserved a bit of a tour. Since the news of this important discovery became known, a plethora of notorious public venues have been vying for the honour of displaying the piece. So Love and Destiny has been on a whirlwind tour over the last few months, and the feedback has been staggering.
Here we have the artwork, magnificently displayed in Sheffield University's flagship new Diamond Building.
Just another angle. And here... Sorry, a bit of a technical hitch. Okay, here we have Love and Destiny displayed at the European Space Agency's Research and Development second floor toilet, where it remained for 12 days.
And most impressively of all, a 2-day-long exhibition at the Sheffield Wednesday Stadium shop, who were only too happy to support such a loyal fan as George on his special day.
Private place, behind the desk, where thousands of Sheffield Wednesday fans come and buy their gear.
Genuine, absolutely genuine.
So, James.
Now, despite all these clear signs, it still took George and Lou almost a year to officially become a couple. George finally plucked up the courage at Jenny McLeod's 18th birthday party. Now, as you can imagine, there's a huge pressure placed on all young people to fit in and appear cool in the eyes of their peers. None more so than at a fancy dress party. George seized the initiative. He chose a costume that would not only impress his friends, but would secure the heart of his future bride. That costume was the back end of a camel. Well, despite this, she said yes, and happy days, thought George. So where does the young couple go to initiate their relationship? Clearly you play it safe. A double date. and to the ever-romantic Brokeback Mountain film. Now, this West End classic clearly sealed the deal, and a relationship was established.
Now, as you see, we've managed to track down a little of George's early years in the form of school reports, which are an interesting window into the past. But we thought it only fair that we put the same efforts into Louisa.
Louisa's face is like a miracle.
Now, the good thing about Louisa, as most people here will know, she is a romantic, well-organised, and never throws anything away. For this reason, we thought some time spent sleuthing around her childhood room would turn up something of note. Well, firstly, we had to bypass the state-of-the-art security system.
So here we are. Louisa's room.
Very tidy.
Yeah, nothing out of the ordinary here. You know, when undertaking this morally questionable assignment, I guess as a best case scenario, we were hoping to, maybe turn up some moderately cringeworthy homework, a cheesy photograph perhaps that would serve the purpose of us all having a bit of a giggle here today. I was not prepared for the gravity of what I was about to find. Do you recognise this drawer, Louisa?
George, sorry, can you just quickly tell us psychology? Right, it was Louisa chasing you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's funny because we now have some conflicting evidence on this. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I present to you evidentiary exhibit A, a handwritten love letter from 17-year-old George. James, would you please?
I used to look forward to psychology just because I knew I would get to sit next to you. I took the mickey because I didn't think you would notice me.
I guess that clears that up, does it not, George?
Well,
Is he okay?
now, George, thankfully, unfortunately, the remainder of this message had degraded over time. It's now so illegible, we were only able to show this small section. Perhaps, George, it was those flowing tears when you were writing this that led to its rapid demise. Shame we haven't got it there.
All right, twist our arm, we'll give you a little more. Oh. James, would you?
There was a group of us going for a curry for someone's birthday, I think. You wore those dark blue jeans. And that black top with bright pink flowers on it. You looked incredible. And it was just before the summer holidays. I couldn't get you out of my head all summer. I'm telling you this because answers on a postcard to that.
So, in the interest of fairness, just to level the embarrassment factor, here are some random pictures of Louisa.
Very good.
Okay. So, where are we? There we go. So the relationship flourished, and within a year, they are considered, by us at least, to be the Queggs power couple, sharing the common room with and hobnobbing with future Cambridge, Harvard, and Sandhurst Military Academy alumni. There's a few familiar faces in this picture. Tom Hamlin, where is he? There he is. Where are you, Tom? Yeah. We also have. You were getting head boy then, right? Well done.
Very good.
We also have the head girl, Jenny. Yeah. So well done, Jenny. And Louisa and George, of course, highlighted in red. George was getting his award for deputy head boy, and Louisa for sports captain.
Sports captain, is that a thing?
It is a thing, yeah.
Very well achieved, anyway. Okay, sixth form then finishes, and as luck would have it, both George and Lou secure places at Manchester where they study physiotherapy. Now, Manchester, as you all may know, it's a great city, and I believe George and Louisa grew and evolved during this time, and made new friends and embraced the student life and all it has to offer. After 3 years, the scene was set. They'd both qualified. They were in a position where they could settle down and forge their own way in the world, where they could truly become fully contributing members of society.
And this is exactly the time that Louisa decided to start another degree in Bristol, and George signed on for Job Seekers Allowance. I know this for a fact because I signed on with him. Every week, wouldn't we, George, we drive over to Matlock to have our forms reviewed and stamped. The effort was considerable, the money not worth bothering with, but the meat sandwiches from Hambridge's kept us coming back.
And thus begins the long-distance relationship.
So George quickly found a job near Ashbourne for the NHS. He used this time to consolidate his skills, to hone his craft. It was a happy time for George. I remember him proudly remarking to me and James at the time that the old ladies he predominantly worked with thought he was hilarious. Despite this ego-enhancing perk, George felt a calling. His hands were destined for younger men's bodies. And he set out like a Dick Whittington to seek his fortune at Derby County.
So George, you've been working now at Derby County for over 6 years. During this time, you've forged some close friendships, become well respected within the Derby County ranks. Now, sadly, we couldn't have all of your colleagues here today, but if they were here, maybe they would be gushing with stories of praise and respect for George. I'm sure they'd regale us with examples of George's professionalism and his motivation and his drive.
Now, there is one aspect of George's lifestyle that doesn't quite fit with the glamorous world of football. Okay, maybe there is more than one, but the main one is this horrible thing, his car. Now, for those of you that don't know, George is fortunate enough to drive a Fiat Panda. And this aptly named car, it is apt because it shares the same ability to attract the opposite sex as an actual panda. George Polglass parks his Panda in the elite car park just outside Pride Park, where it rubs shoulders, as you can see, with top-of-the-line Porsches, Range Rovers and Mercedes. Now, I know what you're thinking. Doesn't quite fit with the image of a professional.
And that sentiment was shared by his Derby County colleagues. And, well, I'm actually pretty choked up here.
This is great.
We've got something quite remarkable. George, do you want to make your way up to the front,
George,
please? They've actually got together, George, and they put their hands in their pockets, and as you know, they're a very generous bunch. And they decided to get you something, and as a result, got this little presentation for you. So, on behalf of all the Derby County staff, colleagues, and players, I'd just like to give you this. It is, in fact, a bus pass.
A multi-use bus pass. The caveat was, you are no longer allowed to park your car next to their vehicle.
Really nice sentiment. Thanks, George.
You're very welcome. Now, you may now be seated. That's the end. Not quite, mate. No, you wish, my friend. So, Louisa has finished her latest work avoidance period and is fortunate to get her first job back near Derby. At this point, George is in his own home, and even has a housemate, Nathan, who's here with us today. Good-natured Nathan, I like to call him. A clean, well-mannered housemate who always pays his bills on time. But our couple in question here, they look forward to long, dark winter nights together, watching TV, snuggled on the sofa, Netflix and chilling, cooking for each other, and all the other normal coupley stuff that living together brings.
Sadly, with Louisa back on the scene, the sword of Damocles is hanging precarious over poor innocent Nathan's head.
So for the second time now in the story, the scene is set. Both our bride and groom are living together. They both have stable jobs. They both have dogs. They've been together for almost a decade. Surely, like a scene from Game of Thrones, he's going to bend that knee and swear allegiance to his queen. Well, that is at least what we thought.
Perfect opportunities came and went. Holidays, considered once in a lifetime. To Spain, to Turkey, skiing in the Alps, New York, Port Maddox. Louisa, to play devil's advocate though, during your relationship, you've gone through 3 leap years. So blame not entirely on George there.
So finally we come to Thailand 2016, and we all know the significance of this holiday. 13 years after they first met, George finally forced that rusted knee into bending and popped the question.
But even this seemed to catch George off guard.
Quite right, James. Let me set the scene. It was the penultimate day of their 2-week Thailand holiday. It was raining hard, and at this point the idea of proposing suddenly jumps into George's head. After 13 years, after first meeting Louisa, he's now somehow up against the clock. First thing every gentleman needs, as my dad mentioned before, is before popping the question, you've got to ask the girl's father for his blessing. It was a warm June morning in Ashbourne, and at 7:30 a.m, Dave was midway through a super fiendish Sudoku while attending to his morning ablution when an uncharacteristically nervous George rang through. Dave, of course, is trying to style it out, trousers round his ankles, trying to make the most of an important tender moment in a somewhat unromantic setting. But blessing secured. Next thing on the list, what does he need? A bit of bling.
Now, George arranges for Louisa to have a 40-minute massage, and that gave him just enough time to sprint into town, over 2 miles away. He had to locate, to choose, and to purchase the ring. Task complete, he returned to Louisa just in time for the hotel happy hour. Now, Louisa remembers George acting a bit cagey after the massage. He was being a bit slow on the drinks, is that right? Just to quote you there, I was on it. We usually go drink for drink, but apparently I was shouting, round, another round! And she had to pay after 8 o'clock. Louisa didn't notice, but George had led her not into town as they were planning, but to a secluded beach where he'd arranged for a private meal. George had even found time to secure the services of a saxophonist to accompany their meal, and he finally proposed with a rehearsed line in Thai.
You know what, James? I find it really refreshing when you hear stories of proposals that aren't remotely cheesy at all. You see, this engagement was actually very romantic, particularly for George, as George usually doesn't seem to do things like this.
What could George have accomplished in that time?
Well, using fairly primitive tools, he could have built himself a coliseum with a few years to spare.
He could have walked to the moon and back.
Or he could have walked the circumference of the Earth 17.5 times.
Interesting fact, YouTube wasn't even a thing when they first got together. You know what? We could all be serious for a moment. It's easy to joke about George, not because he produces an endless opportunity to do so, but because he's so good-natured and he takes it all in good humour. It's that relaxed attitude that people really warm to.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I learnt about George from a young age is he's quite simply one of the most loyal people you could hope to meet. He's loyal to his friends, he's loyal to his family, and of course he's loyal to Louisa. At one of the very first Why Not festivals, when we were essentially school kids, I asked a friend of mine, Jason Oakley, what's this lad George like? You know, the one that knocks around with Lou. He looks a bit in love with himself. Yeah. I said that, I mean, the typical cynicism of your sister's first serious boyfriend, I guess. Jason laughed at me, however, and said, you clearly don't know George then. And after some general defence of George's character, he said with some conviction, if there's anyone you could hope to trust with your sister, Paul Glass is your man. George did later get wrecked, tried to steal my mattress and out of my tent and proceeded to wrestle me. I ended up throwing him in a large bush of nettles and returned. So I think it's fair to say I got to learn a lot about George Paul Glass that night. I do, however, feel really lucky that I've got 2 brother-in-laws who I would consider close mates first and relatives second. Since day one, myself and JK and George have got on effortlessly, and I think anyone who's met George and not quickly grown to strongly dislike him doesn't have a bad word to say about him. There's a compliment in there somewhere.
Honestly, can anyone imagine a world without Louisa and George together? It's not that they've just been courting for what seems like a glacial period of time. It's that they complement each other so perfectly. George is everyone's friend, and Louisa's pretty damn likeable herself. And together, they just make so much sense. and it's unlikely that anyone would struggle to enjoy their company.
So along with yourselves, I'm sure we wish them every happiness together and look forward to continuing to be part of their lives.
We'd just like to wrap up this verbal torrent by proposing a toast or two. Firstly, to our bridesmaids and to our beautiful flower girls. I think you'll agree, they all look transcendent today. We actually have something to say thank you to remember the day George and Louisa got married. So pick this up afterwards, bridesmaids, but your very own.
George and Louisa artwork mouse mats! We'll get them to you very shortly afterwards. So, can we please raise our glasses to the bridesmaids? The bridesmaids. And secondly, to the parents, of course, to George, of George and Lou, Anna and Dave, and Heather and John, a source of true support to George and Louisa through the highs and the lows, and instrumental in today's proceedings. So please, to the parents. And just before our final toast, we've had a couple of song requests for the band tonight that have come to our attention. Firstly, Nathan Mackey, George's former housemate, has requested Yvonne Fair's It Should Have Been Me.
We have Henry from George's Stag Do as a request, Wake Me Up Before You Go Go.
And from our beautiful bride to our dashing groom, she would like classic Emma Bunton's What Took You So Long.
Ladies and gentlemen, charge your glasses for our final toast this evening. After knowing each other for 13 years, living together for 3 years, and being engaged for 18 months, it is mine and Chris's immense pleasure to introduce to you Mr. and Mrs. Polglass.
That's all she wrote.